Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR CBS Spoiler Today channel. Please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Phyllis offers Victor a deal, and Jack tries to play Patty. At the athletic club, Chelsea worries to Adam that Victor's plan to get Newman back has hit a dead end. As they go over the effect this is having on the family, she reminds him of how proud he's made his dad. They worry that Connor may be stuck living off love alone and joke about Adam being a card shark in Las Vegas, and the idea of her returning to her con game. We wish. Warning Phyllis. In Phyllis's office, Billy blurts out that Victor has abducted Jack. Phyllis scoffs, Victor can't even come up with anything original and is already in reruns. Billy reminds her how much Victor hates Jack and demands the contracts within an hour. Billy then warns Red that she doesn't want to see what will happen if he doesn't. Oh, another vague threat. Jack contends with Patty. On the yacht in Lake Michigan, captive Jack is shocked to see Patty out of the psychiatric hospital and in animal print. She assures him she comes in peace, claiming to have been rehabilitated. She's heard that Jack is back with Diane, so he must believe in redemption. Patty Jack. When Patty claims she wants to free both of them, he's skeptical to say the least. Patty explains she just came to check on him, but will be back. She leaves and locks the door. Jack paces the room until Patty returns with a cart of food and drink. He refuses to touch it, so she offers to be his taster so he can be sure he's not being poisoned. She launches into a speech about the hard work she did to finally face the heinous things she did to him and his sisters. After accepting her inhumanity, she realized that she could rebuild herself and be human again. Victor laughs off Phyllis's offer. Phyllis shows up at the ranch, asking Victor what's really happening with Jack. He won't explain, so she informs him Billy doesn't control Chancellor, she does. If he wants to negotiate for Jack, it's going to have to be with her. Smirking, Victor makes it clear that this is not a negotiation. She doubts he's really going to bury Jack in a hole. He warns that she is putting the abbot in danger. When she offers him Chancellor in exchange for Jack, Lily, and the twins, he laughs and questions why she's giving in so fast. She claims it's because she's a good person, which he finds hysterical. Victor Phyllis YNR Billy offers Victor a deal at Society. Billy updates Diane and Kyle on his exchange with Phyllis. Diane is disgusted that Phyllis seems so reluctant to help save a man she was once married to. Billy can't help but wonder if Jack really isn't in danger. They have no proof. Billy YNR Kyle suggests they turn to Victoria for help, but Billy's skeptical. When Billy points out he could lose everything due to the threat, bickering ensues. Grudgingly, Billy texts Victor and offers to get him Chancellor if he provides proof that Jack is safe. The final scenes at the club, Adam and Chelsea decide that their days of grifting are over. It will take a lot more than this setback to send them back to their old ways. Well, that's too bad, we need Adam's dark side back. Find out why here. Narrowing her eyes, Chelsea warns that she will, however, do whatever it takes to get their son what he deserves. Adam Chelsea YNR back at the ranch, Phyllis admits to Victor that she wants her kids to love and respect her. He can understand that, but he doesn't trust her. He asks for an hour, and she questions why he'd want to wait. He doesn't trust her. Victor tells her to draw up the papers and they'll see. Finally, he warns that the deal is off if she tries to negotiate again. Victor Phyllis YNR at Society, Diane can't believe they are depending on Phyllis's humanity to get Jack back. Billy gets a message from an unlisted number with a picture of captive Jack on it, your move. Kyle Diane. On the yacht, Jack tells Patty he could see his way to forgiving her, but he would need her to get him to shore. Sighing, she admits he hasn't lost his charm, but that's not an option. She's not the one in charge. The tension gripping Genoa City intensified as several dangerous games of manipulation, deception, and desperate bargaining unfolded simultaneously, each player believing they held the upper hand while the truth remained tangled in layers of secrets and mistrust. At the athletic club, Chelsea Lawson sat across from Adam Newman with a worried expression, her fingers wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The conversation between them carried the weight of the Newman family's latest crisis. Chelsea admitted that Victor Newman's latest attempt to regain control of Newman Enterprises had apparently hit a dead end, something that rarely happened to the powerful patriarch. Adam leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his expression thoughtful but guarded. Chelsea reminded him that despite everything, Victor had been proud of him lately, especially after Adam stepped up for the family in ways he never had before. Adam brushed it off with a half-smile, but the compliment clearly lingered in his mind. Their talk soon shifted to Connor, their son, and the life they were trying to build for him. Chelsea worried that if things kept going the way they were, Connor might grow up believing that love alone could solve every problem, even when the world demanded money, power, and influence. Adam chuckled darkly and joked that if things got desperate enough, he could always return to being a card shark in Las Vegas, hustling wealthy gamblers at smoky poker tables. Chelsea smirked and responded that she might have to revive her own con artist skills, the ones she had buried when she decided to live a more honest life. For a moment, the two shared a nostalgic laugh, imagining the thrill of their former schemes, but then Chelsea shook her head and reminded Adam that those days were over. Still, the glint in her eyes suggested she wasn't completely opposed to bending the rules if it meant securing Connor's future. Across town, in the sleek office that once symbolized her power and independence, Phyllis Summers found herself staring down Billy Abbott, whose patience had finally run out. Billy burst through the door with the kind of urgency that immediately raised alarm bells. Without even bothering with pleasantries, he blurted out that Victor Newman had abducted Jack Abbott. Phyllis stared at him for a moment before letting out a sarcastic laugh. In her mind, Victor's obsession with Jack was so predictable that it felt like a rerun of an old television episode. She scoffed that Victor clearly couldn't come up with any new ideas if kidnapping Jack was the best he could do. Billy, however, wasn't amused. His jaw tightened as he reminded her exactly how deep Victor's hatred for Jack ran. This wasn't some harmless rivalry, this was a vendetta decades in the making. Billy leaned across the desk and demanded that Phyllis hand over the contracts related to Chancellor within the next hour. His voice carried a warning tone that suggested he wasn't bluffing. Phyllis rolled her eyes at what sounded like yet another vague threat, but Billy's expression didn't waver. He made it clear that if she refused, the consequences would be far worse than she could imagine. For the first time in the conversation, Phyllis felt a flicker of unease. Billy wasn't the type to panic easily, and if he believed Jack was truly in danger, then perhaps this situation was more serious than she had initially assumed. Meanwhile, far away from Genoa City's boardrooms and cocktail lounges, Jack Abbott paced restlessly inside a lavish cabin aboard a yacht drifting on the waters of Lake Michigan. The elegant surroundings did nothing to ease the sense of captivity pressing down on him. His frustration turned to shock when the cabin door opened and Patty Williams stepped inside, wearing a loud animal print outfit that seemed wildly out of place in such a tense moment. Jack's eyes widened as he realized that Patty, the woman who had once terrorized him and his family, was standing right in front of him again. Patty greeted him with an oddly cheerful tone, assuring him she came in peace. She claimed she had been rehabilitated during her time in the psychiatric hospital and insisted that she was a completely different person now. Jack remained skeptical, crossing his arms as he listened to her explanation. Patty mentioned hearing that Jack had reunited with Diane Jenkins, suggesting that if he could believe in Diane's redemption after everything she had done, then perhaps he could extend the same grace to her. Jack didn't respond immediately, his mind racing as he tried to figure out whether Patty was telling the truth or simply playing another twisted game. Patty continued talking, explaining that she had come to check on him and ensure he was being treated well. When she hinted that she wanted to free both of them from their pasts, Jack's skepticism deepened. Before he could press her further, Patty abruptly left the room and locked the door behind her, leaving Jack alone with his thoughts. He paced the floor for several minutes until Patty returned pushing a cart filled with food and drinks. Jack refused to touch anything, suspecting it might be poisoned. Patty laughed and offered to taste everything herself to prove it was safe. As she sampled the food, she launched into a long speech about the therapy sessions that had forced her to confront the terrible things she had done to Jack and his sisters. Patty admitted that facing the darkness inside herself had been the hardest thing she had ever done. But once she accepted that part of her nature, she believed she could rebuild herself and become human again. Back in Genoa City, Phyllis Summers decided it was time to confront the man at the center of the storm. She drove straight to the Newman Ranch and demanded an audience with Victor Newman. When she entered the grand living room, Victor looked as calm and confident as ever, as though he were orchestrating a perfectly planned chess match. Phyllis wasted no time getting to the point. She asked Victor what was really happening with Jack. Victor refused to give her a direct answer, which only strengthened her suspicions. Phyllis informed him that Billy Abbott did not actually control Chancellor Industries the way Victor believed. In reality, she held the leverage needed to make decisions about the company's future. If Victor wanted to negotiate for Jack's release, he would have to deal with her. Victor responded with a slow, amused smirk. He made it clear that what was happening wasn't a negotiation at all. Phyllis challenged him, doubting that he would truly go so far as to bury Jack somewhere and leave him to die. Victor's eyes narrowed as he warned that her attitude was putting Jack in even greater danger. Realizing she might have to play Victor's game, Phyllis made a bold offer. She said she would hand over Chancellor Industries in exchange for Jack, Lily Winters, and the twins. Victor's reaction was immediate laughter. He questioned why Phyllis would surrender such valuable power so quickly. Phyllis tried to frame her decision as an act of compassion, claiming she simply wanted to do the right thing. Victor found the idea of Phyllis Summers describing herself as a good person absolutely hysterical. To him, it sounded like the punchline to a very long joke. While this tense exchange unfolded at the ranch, Billy Abbott met with Diane Jenkins and Kyle Abbott at Society. Billy filled them in on his conversation with Phyllis, explaining that she seemed strangely reluctant to act quickly even though Jack's life might be at stake. Diane was furious at the idea that Phyllis would hesitate to save a man she had once been married to. In Diane's eyes, that hesitation revealed just how selfish Phyllis truly was. Billy admitted that part of him wondered whether Jack was actually in danger or if Victor was simply bluffing again. After all, they had no concrete proof that Jack had been abducted. Kyle suggested reaching out to Victoria Newman for help, reasoning that she might have influence over her father's decisions. Billy wasn't convinced that would work. He pointed out that if Victor forced him into a corner, he could lose everything he had fought to rebuild. The stress of the situation led to a heated argument between Diane and Billy, both of them blaming each other for not doing enough. Eventually Billy sighed and pulled out his phone. He sent Victor a message offering to deliver Chancellor Industries if Victor could provide proof that Jack was alive and unharmed. At the athletic club, Adam and Chelsea continued their conversation about the future. Adam admitted that the temptation to return to his darker instincts sometimes lingered, especially when he felt powerless. Chelsea gently reminded him that they had both worked too hard to escape their pasts to fall back into old habits now. Together they agreed that their days of grifting and manipulating people were behind them. Yet Chelsea's tone changed when she mentioned Connor again. She narrowed her eyes and told Adam that even though they had turned their backs on their criminal pasts, she would still do whatever it took to ensure their son had the life he deserved. Adam recognized that look immediately. It was the same determination that had once made Chelsea one of the most skilled con artists he had ever known. Back at the Newman Ranch, Phyllis's conversation with Victor took a surprisingly emotional turn. She admitted that beneath all the scheming and rivalry, she simply wanted her children, Summer and Daniel, to love and respect her. Victor listened quietly for a moment before acknowledging that he understood that desire better than most. However, understanding didn't mean trust. Victor told Phyllis that he still didn't trust her motives. He asked for an hour before making any decisions about her offer. Phyllis frowned, confused about why he would delay if he already had the upper hand. Victor explained that the delay would give him time to see whether she truly meant what she said. He instructed her to draw up the legal documents transferring control of Chancellor. If everything looked legitimate, then perhaps they could proceed. But he issued one final warning. If Phyllis attempted to renegotiate or change the terms in any way, the entire deal would collapse instantly. Meanwhile, tension continued to build at society. Diane paced anxiously while Kyle tried to reassure her that they would find a way to rescue Jack. Diane admitted she couldn't believe their only hope might be relying on Phyllis Summers to show a sense of humanity. Just as Billy was about to respond, his phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. When he opened it, his face went pale. The message contained a photograph of Jack sitting inside the yacht cabin, clearly alive but unmistakably a prisoner. Beneath the photo were two chilling words, "Your move." Billy silently turned the phone toward Kyle and Diane, who stared at the image in shock. Out on Lake Michigan, the psychological chess match between Jack and Patty continued. Jack studied Patty carefully, trying to determine whether there was any truth in her claims of rehabilitation. Finally he spoke calmly, telling Patty that he might be able to forgive her for everything she had done in the past. But forgiveness would require one simple act: she would have to take him back to shore and let him go. Patty sighed with a mixture of amusement and regret. She admitted that Jack hadn't lost any of his famous charm. Unfortunately for him, she wasn't the one making the decisions anymore. Patty revealed that someone else was in charge of the operation, someone whose plans were far more complicated than Jack realized. As the yacht continued drifting across the dark waters of Lake Michigan, Jack understood that he wasn't just a hostage, he was a piece on a much larger chessboard, one that stretched all the way back to Genoa City, where Victor Newman, Phyllis Summers, Billy Abbott, and several others were all maneuvering for power, redemption, and survival in a game that was becoming more dangerous by the minute. As the night deepened across Genoa City, the sense that an invisible clock was ticking grew stronger for everyone involved in the dangerous web surrounding Jack Abbott's disappearance. Billy Abbott remained frozen for a moment after receiving the photograph from the unknown number. The image was unmistakable: Jack sitting inside a well-furnished but locked cabin, the tension in his posture betraying that he knew he was being watched. Diane Jenkins leaned closer to Billy, her eyes scanning the photo again and again as if hoping to find some clue hidden in the background. Kyle Abbott clenched his jaw, anger rising in his chest. Seeing his father reduced to a hostage struck a nerve that neither Diane nor Billy could calm. Kyle pointed out that whoever sent the message clearly wanted them to panic. The words "your move" were not just a taunt, they were an invitation into a negotiation that someone else believed they already controlled. Billy rubbed his forehead, thinking through the implications. Victor Newman was the obvious suspect behind Jack's abduction, but the fact that the message came from an unlisted number suggested the situation might be more complicated. Victor rarely bothered hiding his involvement when he wanted someone to know he held the power. That small detail made Billy wonder if Victor was only one piece of a larger operation. Diane, however, wasn't interested in analyzing strategy anymore. Her voice trembled with anger as she insisted that they couldn't just sit around debating theories while Jack remained captive somewhere out on Lake Michigan. She demanded that Billy contact Victor immediately and force him to admit what he had done. Kyle placed a calming hand on his mother's arm, reminding her that acting impulsively could make things worse for Jack. Whoever was controlling the situation clearly wanted leverage, and if they felt threatened, Jack might pay the price. Billy nodded in agreement. He explained that the message meant they were expected to respond in a calculated way, not with panic. Billy picked up his phone again, rereading the text message carefully. The photograph appeared to be taken only minutes earlier, meaning whoever sent it was still monitoring Jack closely. That realization sent a chill down his spine. Somewhere out there, someone was watching Jack like a prisoner under constant surveillance. Meanwhile, back at the Newman ranch, Victor Newman stood quietly near the fireplace, staring into the flames while Phyllis Summers waited impatiently for his answer. She had already called her legal team to begin drafting the paperwork that would transfer control of Chancellor Industries, but the longer Victor remained silent, the more she began to suspect that he was enjoying the tension. Victor finally turned toward her with the slow confidence of a man who knew exactly how much power he held in the moment. He reminded Phyllis that she had spent years manipulating people for her own benefit, so it was difficult for him to believe that her sudden willingness to sacrifice a massive company was purely an act of compassion. Phyllis folded her arms defensively, insisting that she was simply trying to do the right thing for once. Victor responded with a quiet laugh, noting that the phrase doing the right thing rarely appeared in the same sentence as Phyllis Summers. Still, he admitted that her offer intrigued him. Chancellor Industries had long been a valuable asset in Genoa City's corporate landscape, and controlling it would strengthen the Newman empire considerably. Phyllis, however, refused to let Victor dominate the conversation entirely. She leaned forward slightly and reminded him that while he might enjoy playing puppet master, the longer Jack remained missing, the more attention the situation would attract. If the authorities began digging into the matter, Victor's carefully constructed plans might start to unravel. Victor's eyes narrowed briefly, but the warning didn't seem to shake him. He told Phyllis that the world had accused him of many things over the years.